We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? The night rain poured endlessly over the coastal town of Monterey, each heavy drop lashing against the slick, lamplit streets. The long road was almost deserted, save for the distant roar of the ocean mixed with the whistle of wind tearing through the swaying palms. A shiny red sedan sat tilted at the curb, thin smoke curling from under its hood. Hazard lights blinked in fiery red, reflecting on the puddles below. Beside the car stood a young woman, frowning, her high heels sunk into the mud, her glittering short dress plastered with rain. Amanda Zinab muttered curses under her breath, jabbing at her phone. No Uber? Ridiculous! This is California, not the middle of nowhere. She stomped her foot in frustration, her fingers trembling from the cold. Just then, a tall figure emerged from the end of the street. He wore a faded jacket, torn jeans, and mud-stained shoes. His wet hair clung to his face, his eyes glinting faintly under the streetlight. At first glance, he looked like nothing more than a drifter. Daniel Cole. His voice was low and warm but calm. Car trouble? Amanda spun around, glaring at him from head to toe. Yeah, so what? What are you going to do about it? You're not a mechanic. Daniel said nothing more. He stepped closer, lifted the hood, and bent over the engine. With swift fingers, he wiped the damp spark plug and tightened a loose wire. Moments later, the engine roared back to life. Amanda froze for a second, but instead of gratitude, she tossed her hair and sneered. Wow, impressive. Beggar who can fix a luxury car. What a joke. Daniel looked at her silently, his gaze distant, as though he'd grown used to that kind of disdain. Amanda climbed into her car, slammed the door, and sped off, splashing rainwater in every direction. The car disappeared down the road, leaving Daniel alone in the cold night, his thin jacket soaked through with the rain. He looked up at the gray sky, exhaling a long breath into the rain. Then quietly he walked on, his figure fading into the dark street. The next morning, Monterey awoke under soft golden sunlight. The brick-paved streets had dried after the night storm. The rhythm of the waves blended with the cries of seagulls, creating a peaceful scene. Daniel wandered along the main road. He had no real destination, just looking for a small diner to grab a bite. His steps halted in front of a white villa with blue trim, its wrought iron fence curling in elegant patterns. He had no idea whose house it was. But fate decided otherwise at that very moment. The front door swung open. Amanda, in chic yoga wear, stepped out holding a steaming cup of coffee. When her eyes landed on Daniel, she froze, then shrieked as if seeing a nightmare return. Oh my God! Are you following me? Her sharp voice was loud enough to make a few neighbors walking their dogs stop to watch. One even raised a phone to record. Startled, Daniel quickly shook his head. No, I was just... Before he could finish, Amanda flung the entire cup of hot coffee onto his chest, her shrill voice echoing down the street. There! Now remember the way to disappear, stalker! The paper cup fell to the steps, coffee spreading in a dark stain. Daniel stood still, liquid dripping from his worn jacket, his eyes shadowed. Neighbors began to whisper. Some lifted their phones to record the scene. From inside, slippered footsteps shuffled out. Madame Zinab, draped in silk, stood with one hand on her hip, smirking. Amanda, you're clever indeed. A bum thinking he can dream of my daughter? What a morning comedy show. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Daniel clenched his fists but said nothing, only bowing his head in silence. The door cracked open again. Emily stepped out, holding a glass of water, her brown hair tousled by the breeze. She froze at the sight. Neighbors gathered like an audience. Amanda sneering, the stepmother gloating, and Daniel drenched in coffee, standing silently. Emily sighed, set her glass on the railing, and slowly walked down the steps. Amanda, what a waste of a $6 cappuccino. If it were me, I'd have kept it to drink. Her voice was gentle, but enough to make a few neighbors snicker. Amanda flushed and snapped, Shut up, Emily, you don't understand anything. Ignoring her, Emily walked toward Daniel. She glanced at his soaked jacket, then wordlessly pulled off her faded gray hoodie and held it out. Here, put this on. It's still windy. You'll catch a cold. I have another one. Daniel looked startled, his eyes meeting hers. In those brown eyes there was no pity, only calmness, with a hint of quiet defiance. I, I'll be fine, he stammered. Emily frowned, her tone firm. Don't argue. Just think of it as me hating the sight of coffee stains. The crowd murmured again. Zainab scoffed. Amanda lifted her phone to record, her voice dripping with venom. Perfect. A new TikTok clip. Angel saves the beggar. Emily didn't even glance their way. She just stood there, steady, waiting for Daniel to take the hoodie. At last, Daniel reached out and accepted it. For the first time since this humiliation began, warmth spread through his chest, not from the hoodie, but because someone had finally seen him as a person. He gave a small nod and whispered, just loud enough for Emily to hear. Thank you. The air outside the Zainab residence was taut as a bowstring. Daniel still stood there, wearing the faded gray hoodie Emily had just draped over him. It was still stained with coffee, but at least the chill no longer cut into his skin. He bowed his head slightly, a quiet nod in thanks. Amanda folded her arms, laughing sharply. Oh my God, what a morning show! A stray drifter and a pathetic big sister. What a perfect pair. Why don't you just marry him, Emily, so everyone can stop laughing already? Her words struck like a match to dry tinder. A few neighbors burst out laughing, and someone live streaming zoomed the camera right onto Emily's face. Emily flushed, flustered but refusing to back down. Her voice shook, yet she spoke firmly. Amanda, that's enough. He hasn't done anything wrong for you to humiliate him like that. Oh, so now you defend him more than your own family? Amanda arched a brow, flashing her phone screen before pointing the camera straight at Daniel. Ladies and gentlemen of Monterey, allow me to introduce you to Emily Carter's future husband. The crowd erupted in roaring laughter. Madame Zainab looped her arm through her daughter's, her shrill voice pouring fuel on the fire. If you dare stand before the whole street defending him, fine. Prove it, Emily. Marry him soon. That's the only thing fitting for your kind. Another wave of laughter broke out. One neighbor covered her mouth, giggling. Oh, this has to go on the town's Facebook group. Emily stood frozen, blood rushing to her cheeks. She wanted to scream that it was nothing more than a cruel joke, but under her stepmother's scorn and her sister's mocking grin, her voice caught in her throat. Daniel, silent until now, suddenly lifted his head. His gaze swept the crowd, then settled on Emily. For a fleeting moment, he saw her trembling, yet still standing tall, refusing to run. A strange fire sparked within him. He smiled. His voice was deep but clear, carrying across the street. If that's what you want, then so be it. In 2 weeks I'll come back. Not to beg, but to marry her, if she agrees. The air exploded. 2 weeks? Amanda howled with laughter, bending over. What are you going to do? Buy a ring at the 99-cent store? Or sell aluminum cans to pay for it? The crowd roared again, some even clapping as if it were a comedy show. Emily's mouth fell open, her eyes wide. What did you just say? Are you insane? Daniel tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. I've never joked when looking into someone's eyes. His gaze locked onto hers, warm, steady, so unwavering that Emily faltered. Her heart skipped a beat, but quickly, flustered, she snapped to cover it. You're ridiculous. I want no part in this madness. Laughter rippled once more. Amanda's live stream went viral with comments flashing on screen. Hottest drama of the week. Emily marrying a homeless guy. Shocking. Zainab clapped her hands in mock delight. Perfect. Go ahead and rescue my family's reputation. 2 weeks from now, I'll be front row at this so-called miracle wedding. Emily clenched her fists, caught between shame and fury. But Daniel remained calm. Pulling the hoodie closer around him, he leaned toward her and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, I'll be back, and I'll prove it. I never joke. The words left Emily stunned. She wanted to fire back, but the response lodged in her throat. Daniel turned and walked away, his tall figure fading into the street, still buzzing with whispers. Phones stayed raised, all aimed at Emily. Amanda whistled mockingly, laughing. Congrats, sis. You're about to be the most famous beggar's bride on TikTok. Emily spun on her heel, ignoring the jeers, and stormed into the house. Her heart pounded wildly, her mind echoing with his words. I've never joked when looking into someone's eyes. Far down the street, Daniel kept walking, that faint, mysterious smile still flickering on his lips. The faded hoodie clung to his shoulders like a small flag. Not pretty, not new, but carrying a true warmth. And from that very moment, the entire town began buzzing about the 2-week wedding, a joke to many, but the beginning of a story no one could have imagined. The news that Emily Carter will marry a homeless man in 2 weeks spread like wildfire across Monterey. Amanda's livestream racked up tens of thousands of views. People laughed, giving Emily the cruel nickname, the Beggar's Bride. At the farmer's market or in small cafes, whenever the Zainab family came up, everyone gossiped half with pity, half with amusement. Emily gritted her teeth and endured. She didn't watch the clip, didn't read the comments. To her, it was all just a cruel joke that Daniel had accidentally fueled. 2 weeks? Who would take that seriously? He probably just wanted to shut Amanda and my stepmother up. Emily remembered she was only 19 when her father passed away. He had left her the boutique shop, the house, and savings enough for his daughter to have a fresh start. But Zainab, her smooth-talking, cunning stepmother, moved fast. Within weeks, through papers Emily naively signed, every asset was transferred into Zainab's name. Emily was left with nothing, forced to live in her own father's house as little more than a maid. She stayed because the place held the only memories she had left of her parents. Zainab knew it and used that to keep her under control. After the incident with Daniel, Zainab acted as if she'd struck gold. This is a heaven-sent opportunity, she said, arms crossed, lips curling. She's already a public laughingstock. All we need to do is push a little further, and she'll humiliate herself into leaving. Amanda gleefully filmed daily clips. Emily scrubbing the floors of a boutique, hauling heavy boxes, and hand-washing piles of old clothes. She uploaded them with mocking songs and captions, training to be the beggar's wife. The internet erupted in laughter and shared the clips like wildfire. Emily became a punchline. Zainab put on her fake air of morality. She chose that man. We're just helping her prepare for the beggar life. Emily swallowed her tears and stayed silent, working. In her heart, she told herself, just endure. This too will pass. A few times while Emily was hauling trash or tidying the shop front, she spotted Daniel nearby, leaning against a lamppost or sitting on the old bench outside. At first, she scowled. Are you following me? Daniel shrugged, his voice steady. I need to make sure you don't run away from the wedding. Emily burst out laughing, though she tried to stay stern. What wedding? You were joking. I don't even have a wedding dress. Daniel glanced at her, lips curling faintly. Dresses can be found. What matters is the one wearing it. Emily shook her head, laughing. In her mind, he was just keeping the 2-week show alive for fun. One evening after closing the boutique, Emily slumped onto the steps, exhausted. Daniel appeared and handed her a cheap sandwich. Careful, this counts as a bribe, Emily joked as she accepted it. You trying to buy a bride with a sandwich? Better than nothing, Daniel said with a shrug. But if you want, I can throw in a bag of chips. Emily burst out laughing. They sat side by side, splitting the sandwich in half. Daniel asked, if you could get out of here, what would you want to do? Emily gazed up at the sky, her voice soft, dreamy. I'd open a small cafe, sell donuts, muffins, and hot coffee. Nothing fancy, just warm and welcoming so that anyone who walked in felt at home. That was my dad's dream too. Daniel listened quietly, his expression softening. Emily flicked her hair, teasing, but be careful. If you really marry me, you'll be washing dishes for life. Fine by me, but I'll charge by the smile on your face. 1 smile equals 1 hour of work. Emily laughed so hard she clapped her hands. God, you're ridiculous. To her, it was all just a joke. But Daniel sat in silence, eyes fixed on her smile as if he'd found his light. In the days that followed, Amanda continued to post humiliating clips. Zainab worked her like a slave, calling it training the poor bride. And yet, amid exhaustion, Emily found herself remembering the small moments on the steps, the silly banter, and the times Daniel appeared just when she needed a break. He never promised her anything. He just listened and laughed with her, To Emily, it was still just a strange, drawn-out joke, but she didn't know that. For Daniel, this joke was slowly becoming the most serious truth of his life. The bus stop at the end of the street was usually deserted after 8 o'clock. The yellow streetlights flickered, the metal benches were cold, and the ocean wind carried the scent of salt and dampness. Few people lingered there except for two familiar shadows. Emily set down a brown paper bag, pulling out two cheap sandwiches she had bought from the small shop near the boutique. She handed one to Daniel with a bright smile, as if she were offering a gourmet meal. "Dinner is served, future groom. Tonight's special menu, discounted cold chicken sandwiches." Daniel took it with a faint smile. "Better than going hungry. I suppose we'd better get used to budget meals like this." Emily burst out laughing as she unwrapped hers. "Relax. If you really mean to marry me, you'll suffer more than this. Besides sandwiches, you'll be stuck washing dishes every night for free." Daniel pretended to sigh, chewing his bite before nodding solemnly. "Fine. I'll officially take the post of janitor at your future cafe. Mopping floors, washing dishes, hauling trash, all included." "Oh, you sound awfully confident," Emily teased, her eyes glinting playfully. "But do you even have experience? Don't let me hire low-quality staff." Daniel leaned an elbow on the bench, putting on a serious face. "Experience? I've washed dishes in the army, mopped dorm floors, and even swept churchyards. My resume is thick." Emily clutched her stomach, laughing, nearly dropping her sandwich. "God, what a resume! And what about special skills?" Daniel narrowed his eyes, struggling not to laugh. "Special skill, making you laugh even while eating cold sandwiches." Emily blinked for a second, then broke into another round of laughter. Her clear laugh rang out in the quiet night. When the laughter faded, the night wind swept back in, carrying its chill. Emily pulled her thin jacket closer, her gaze drifting far away. The bus stop was theirs alone. Daniel glanced at her, his voice low. "Emily, I really wonder, why are you still there? In that house? With them?" Her lips pressed tight, her smile slipping away. She stayed silent for a long moment, weighing whether to speak. Finally, her voice came softly. "Because it's my father's house, the place I grew up, the only place my memories still live. If I leave, I'll have nothing left." Daniel said nothing, listening as she went on. "When my dad died, he left everything to me. The house, the boutique, even his savings. He wanted me to have a new start. But I was foolish. I signed the papers Zainab gave me. She said it was just paperwork. Turns out I signed everything over to them." Her voice trembled but did not break. Emily drew in a deep breath and forced a faint smile. "Now all I have is my little room and the wooden table where he used to read the newspaper. Every morning I brew coffee, breathe in the scent of pine, and pretend he's still there. You see, if I walk away, I lose even that memory." Daniel's hand tightened around his sandwich. His gaze darkened, then softened again, tinged with respect. "You endured all of this just to hold on to those memories." Emily nodded, this time with a genuine smile, though bittersweet. "Yes, and I don't regret it. At least I can still remember them in that house." Daniel didn't reply right away. He just sat there watching her face under the pale streetlight. Her features were faint, but her eyes burned bright. She wasn't the weak victim everyone assumed. She was someone who could hold on to a smile in the dark. Someone who chose to stay to protect what mattered. Inside him, a quiet admiration grew stronger. Emily turned to him, narrowing her eyes. "Hey, why so quiet? Thinking I'm pitiful?" Daniel shook his head, his voice warm and deep. I think you're stronger than anyone I've ever met." Emily looked at him, startled, then chuckled, breaking the heavy air with a playful jab. "Well, thanks, but you're still washing the dishes. Compliments don't lighten the workload." Daniel laughed, his eyes never leaving her. The afternoon in Monterey was cloaked in a pale gray, the sunlight weaker than usual. On the quiet street, Zainab's boutique sat nearly empty of customers. Emily bent over, scrubbing the wooden floor, an endless chore repeated day after day, when a soft knock echoed at the door. She looked up. It was Daniel. He still wore the same faded hoodie, the old jeans frayed at the knees, looking no different than the times before. But in his hands, Emily noticed a large box wrapped in pristine white paper, tied with a silver ribbon. Emily frowned. You again? Don't tell me you brought another sandwich. I haven't even digested last time's Beggar's Bride specialty. Daniel didn't answer. He simply walked in, set the box on the wooden table, and looked at her with a glimmer in his eyes that was hard to name. Then he opened the lid. For an instant, the whole room seemed to brighten. Inside lay a wedding gown, pure white satin, soft and flowing, adorned with crystals that caught the fading sunlight. Beside it sat a small jewelry box containing a white gold necklace and a pair of intricate earrings, sparkling like dewdrops. Emily froze. The rag in her hand slipped to the floor as she reached out, trembling, to touch the gown's hem. Oh God, Daniel, how did you get this? He smiled, his voice calm but resolute. I told you, dresses can be found. What matters is the one who wears it. Emily let out a shaky laugh. She held the gown against her chest, her eyes shining with emotion. If I wore this, would I look like a princess? Daniel met her gaze. No teasing, no mockery, only warmth and depth in his eyes. If you're the princess, then I'll gladly be the servant who washes dishes for life. Emily laughed, but tears welled up. You really can't give up the dishwashing line, can you? Daniel shrugged lightly. That's the job I'd gladly take if it's the price for your smile. She turned away, trying to hide the wave of emotion rising inside her. Her heart pounded so hard her chest felt tight. Daniel, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Why are you doing all this? You know what I am. I have nothing. I'm just the girl my stepmother torments. No fortune, no name. Daniel stepped closer, his voice lowering, deliberate. You still have yourself. You still have a heart that refuses to stop believing in good. That's enough. Emily clutched the gown tighter. A fleeting smile crossed her lips, but the tears rolled freely. No one had ever spoken of her that way. Since her father's death, all she'd heard were insults, scorn, and ridicule. But now here was someone who dared to look into her eyes and say, You are worthy. Daniel spoke gently. Emily, 2 weeks from now, I want to marry you. I'm not joking, not to challenge anyone, not to answer ridicule. I truly mean it. Emily went still. She thought she had misheard. Every other time, she had convinced herself it was just some wild joke. But his voice, now slow, steady, certain, made her heart tremble. You're serious, she whispered. Daniel nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. Emily pressed her lips together and lowered her head. She didn't know how to answer. Part of her was afraid, distrustful of the future, but another part longed to believe, longed to take that hand. At last in the silence she gave the faintest nod, hesitant, but it was an answer. Daniel smiled, a look of relief, tenderness, and sincerity. He said no more, only closed the box and reminded her softly, Keep it safe, it's yours and no one else's. Then he left, his figure fading down the street. Emily sat frozen, holding the gown, tears streaming down her face. Yet for the first time in years, a smile curved her lips. Her joy had barely warmed her heart when the door burst open. Amanda stormed in, chewing gum, her eyes locked on the box. Oh my God, she squealed, rushing forward. Is this an actual Vera Wang? Amanda, don't, Emily cried, panicked. But it was too late. Amanda snatched the gown from her hands, pressed it to her own body, and spun before the mirror. Perfect. This suits me much better. You should stick to cheap rags, sister. Sharp heels clicked again. Zainab entered, her eyes immediately glued to the jewelry box. She seized it, turning it so that it was under the light. White gold, real, she whispered greedily. This is worth more than anything I own. From now on, it's mine. No, Emily sobbed. That's my gift. Daniel. Daniel? Zainab scoffed, her voice bitter. That beggar couldn't possibly afford this. He must have stolen it and brought it here to fool you. Amanda roared with laughter, hugging the gown. Exactly, Mom. Hilarious. Big sister, the fool planning to wear stolen goods down the aisle? Or should we call the cops to cuff your Homeless groom. No, Emily shouted, tears pouring down. He isn't like that. He would never. Zainab cut her off, her tone sharp as a knife. Silence. The gown belongs to Amanda now. The jewelry is mine. And you. She tossed a ragged, filthy dress into Emily's arms. This suits you. The beggar's bride should wear a beggar's dress. Amanda doubled over, laughing. Perfect. TikTok's gonna crash from laughing so hard. Emily clutched the rags, her body trembling. She sobbed, but her eyes burned bright, unbroken. You can take everything from me, but you'll never take my faith. Amanda sneered. Faith in what? Emily lifted her chin, her voice shaking but firm. Faith that he isn't like you. That night, Emily sat in her dark little room, clutching the ragged dress. The beautiful gown had been stolen, mocked, turned into a joke. But in her heart, Daniel's words still echoed. If you're the princess, then I'll gladly be the servant who washes dishes for life. Tears flowed, but for the first time they weren't only from despair. In the darkness, a light flickered, something she had never dared dream of before. There was someone who truly saw her worth, and that alone was enough to make her sit up, wipe her tears, and whisper, Daniel, I'll believe in you. The backyard of the villa had once been lovingly tended by Emily's father, filled with rose trellises and bright red geraniums. But now, under Zainab's hand, it had been turned into a shabby stage for a cruel performance. Old plastic chairs were lined up in 2 rows. A rickety wooden table was draped with a yellowed white cloth. On top sat a tiny store-bought cake with a broken candle stuck crookedly. Neighbors crowded outside the fence, curious and eager, some recording, some live streaming, their voices buzzing with gossip. Amanda, clad in a brand new designer dress, phone in hand, laughed loudly. Welcome to the wedding of the beggar's bride. Let's see how my poor sister shines today. The camera swung toward Emily. The young woman stepped out, draped in a shredded gown that hung crookedly on her thin frame. The fabric was wrinkled and torn, exposing pale skin beneath. Her hair was tied hastily, messy strands blowing in the breeze. On her feet were worn-out shoes with flattened heels, nothing like what one would expect on a so-called wedding day. Laughter exploded from the makeshift audience. My God, she really looks like a beggar bride. That dress looks like a dish rag. This'll be a meme by tomorrow. Emily heard every word, her heart twisting, but she inhaled deeply, forcing out a bitter smile to mock herself. At least I still have a dress to wear. The crowd erupted again, mistaking her irony for confession. Amanda shoved the phone close to Emily's face, sneering. Perfect. She admitted it herself. Knows how to troll her own audience. Zainab folded her arms, standing like a wicked queen, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Hurry up. The only salvation for you today is a beggar. Hopefully he remembers the way back. Emily sat down on the wobbly wooden chair, clutching the ragged fabric in her fists. She had once dreamed of a simple, warm wedding, her father holding her hand, giving her to a man who deserved her. Now she faced nothing but humiliation before the mocking eyes of an entire town. Tears stung her eyes, but she swallowed them. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry in front of Zainab and Amanda again. A little boy whispered to his mother, Mom, why are they making her wear rags? The mother blushed, tugging him away, but no one dared speak up. Emily forced a crooked smile, mocking her own misery. Actually, this dress is much breezier than a designer gown. Some neighbors chuckled, whether from pity or genuine amusement, no one could tell. Amanda pranced around, phone camera capturing every corner, her shrill voice cutting through the air. Attention, Monterey. This is my sister, the bride of a beggar. Take your photos, record your videos, because this spectacle won't ever happen again. Comments flooded the live stream. Is this real? Plot twist crazier than Netflix. Is this a wedding or a comedy show? Amanda cackled, shoving the lens inches from Emily's face. Smile, bride, big and bright. Let the internet enjoy the happy ending of your life. Emily looked straight into the camera, her lips trembling, before curving into a broken smile. It was like shattered glass glittering, but cutting into her own heart. See that? Amanda squealed. The beggar bride knows how to shine. Emily's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Every laugh, every sneer cut deeper into wounds that had never healed. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Her strength was gone, leaving her slumped in tatters like a puppet in someone else's cruel play. In her mind, Daniel's words echoed, "If you're the princess, then I'll gladly be the servant who washes dishes for life." She closed her eyes, fists clenched, forcing herself not to break. "You'll come, won't you? You won't let me sit here alone." Suddenly, a deep rumble tore through the air, the growl of an engine from down the street. The crowd fell silent, heads turning. In the distance, a long black limousine rolled forward slowly, its polished surface catching the golden light. Behind it trailed a line of luxury cars, headlights blazing. "That's a real limo," someone gasped. "Oh my God, is the mayor coming? Or could it be?" Amanda froze, her phone trembling in her grip. Zainab squinted, swallowing hard, though she forced a fake smile. Emily's eyes widened, her heart hammering. The neighbors buzzed with shock, the whole town holding its breath. The engines cut off in front of the gate. The atmosphere turned suffocating, as if the entire charade was about to be ripped apart. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home, to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. The roar of the limousine engine tore through the shabby backyard. Neighbors pressed against the fence, holding up their phones to livestream the event. A haze of dust settled over the rickety plastic chairs and the yellowed tablecloth, making the pitiful setup look even more absurd compared to the fleet of luxury cars rolling in. The sleek, black limo came to a stop at the gate. Behind it, two black SUVs with tinted windows followed, along with a delivery truck overflowing with fresh flowers and gift boxes. Every vehicle bore an elegant silver-embossed logo. Overhead, the low thunder of jet engines echoed. The crowd craned their necks, stunned. A private jet was descending toward Monterey Airport, only a few miles away. "Good Lord, who is this?" a neighbor gasped, clutching her purse. "Must be some VIP who took a wrong turn." "No way it's for here," stammered the man beside her. Amanda's hands shook so badly the phone camera wobbled, streaming only blurs. Zainab swallowed hard, her face stiff, forcing a brittle smile as if she still had control. The limo door swung open. A figure stepped out. Daniel. Gone was the drifter in a faded hoodie. He wore a flawless white suit, tailored to perfection, a sleek black tie at his collar. Polished leather shoes clicked against the pavement as he walked with steady, commanding steps. Four men in black suits followed close behind, their eyes sharp, earpieces buzzing faintly with radio chatter. The backyard fell silent. Not a breath, not a whisper. Emily's eyes widened, her breath caught. The man before her looked nothing like the beggar everyone mocked, yet those eyes, warm and steadfast, were still Daniel's. A ripple of shock swept through the crowd. "It can't be Daniel! I know him. That's Daniel Cole, CEO of Coltech. My God, Forbes did a feature on his net worth in the tens of billions." Amanda's lips quivered, her phone nearly slipping from her grasp. Zainab gripped a plastic chair just to stay upright. Daniel strode straight toward Emily. He shrugged off his white suit jacket and draped it gently over her shoulders, covering the tattered remnants of her wedding rags. The whispers stopped. No one even dared breathe. Daniel turned, locking eyes with Amanda's camera, his voice resonant and unshakable. "No diamond shines brighter than she does." He took Emily's hand firmly in his, then declared to the entire town, "Today she is my wife." The crowd erupted. Some clapped wildly. Others wept at the overwhelming scene. People outside the fence surged forward, desperate for a closer view. Emily bit her lip as tears streamed freely, but this time not from humiliation. These were tears of joy, unstoppable. Daniel leaned down, whispering only for her, "You are the only princess I've ever waited for." Emily laughed through her tears, whispering back, "Then remember your promise, lifetime dishwashing duty." Daniel chuckled, eyes blazing. He turned, guiding Emily toward the makeshift red carpet hastily unrolled from the flower truck. His security team opened the way as townsfolk on both sides cheered, calling out their names in celebration. Amanda screamed, clutching at the stolen wedding gown. "No, that dress is mine! I'm the one who deserves to wear it!" Zainab rushed forward, voice trembling. "Daniel!" I, I didn't know you were. Daniel's cold glare silenced her. One look was enough to make Zainab stumble back, shaking. She is everything to me, he said, his voice like steel. And from this moment on, no one will ever harm her again. Amanda collapsed into a chair, her face drained of color. Zainab lowered her head, stripped of all pretense and power. Emily stood at Daniel's side, wrapped in his white jacket. Every sneer, every mocking live stream was instantly transformed into undeniable proof of Amanda and Zainab's shame. The crowd erupted with cheers, children chanting, "Emily is a princess! Emily is a princess!" She turned to Daniel, her voice choked yet radiant. "I used to think this was all just a joke." Daniel smiled, brushing away her tears. "But I've never once joked about marrying you." Amid applause and flashing cameras, Emily nodded, her smile glowing. She still wore the ragged dress, but now it was hidden beneath a spotless white jacket, and a love that was real. The disgraceful wedding had transformed into a triumph, and the town of Monterey would never forget the day a so-called beggar stepped out of a limo as a billionaire CEO and publicly claimed the despised girl as his one and only wife. The backyard that had once been staged as a cruel joke now felt like a public square. The people of Monterey packed tightly against the fence, their chatter and cheers mixing with the ocean wind. No one left. Everyone knew they were witnessing a moment destined to become legend in town, the day the beggar's bride became the billionaire's wife. Emily, still in her torn wedding dress, but now draped with Daniel's crisp white jacket, stood by his side. Her heart still pounded in her chest, but her eyes shone bright. No more lowered head, no more hiding her tears. Daniel released her hand and stepped forward. He stood tall, his gaze sweeping the crowd before settling on Zainab and Amanda. His voice rang out, clear and sharp, each word slicing the air like a blade. "It's time to tell the truth." The crowd fell silent. Everyone leaned in, waiting. Daniel drew in a deep breath, his eyes steady with resolve. "A year ago, I had an argument with a close friend, also my business partner. He insisted that as a CEO with a massive fortune, no woman could ever truly love me. That's all they would ever see was my money." He paused, his eyes shifting to Amanda, then sweeping over the crowd. "So I made a wager with him. I would leave it all behind, strip away the wealth, the suits, the titles, and see if anyone could recognize the man I really am, not just the wallet I carry." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "My God, so that's what it was!" Crazy challenge, but admirable. Daniel turned to Emily, his expression softening, warm. "And I found you. Emily, the only one who gave me her hoodie when the world laughed. The only one who shared a cheap sandwich and laughed with me like it mattered." Emily's face flushed. She smiled shyly, tears glittering at the corners of her eyes. Amanda staggered, clutching her phone as the live stream shook, broadcasting her panic to thousands of viewers. She rushed forward, her voice shrill with desperation. "No! You're lying! Daniel, you wanted me first, remember? I was the one you were meant to choose. I deserve to stand by your side." Daniel turned, his eyes like ice, cutting her words short. His tone was firm, unyielding. "The greedy and the cruel are never worthy." Amanda faltered, her lips trembling. I only—" He didn't let her finish. "When I stood at this house soaked and humiliated, you threw hot coffee in my face. You mocked me. You treated me like trash. But Emily, she saw me. Even when the whole world laughed, she saw me." Applause burst from the crowd. Some women wiped their eyes. Men nodded solemnly. All eyes now turned with contempt toward Amanda and Zainab. Amanda broke down sobbing, collapsing onto a plastic chair, clutching the designer gown she had stolen, which now looked nothing more than ridiculous fabric in her hands. Zainab tried to recover, stepping forward with a strained smile. "Come now, Daniel. It's all a misunderstanding. We actually care for Emily. We only meant to test her." Daniel narrowed his eyes, his voice dropping low but slicing like steel. "You call this a test? Forcing her to live like a servant, recording mocking clips, stealing every inheritance her father left her, then accusing me of theft?" The crowd erupted in outrage. "What? They stole Emily's inheritance? Unbelievable! Zinab's face drained of color. Her hands trembled. I, I... Daniel cut her off, sharp and final. Enough. The truth is plain. From this day forward, Emily will never suffer humiliation again. He turned, extending his hand to her. Emily hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his. The yard thundered with cheers. She looked up at him, eyes wet with tears. Daniel, her voice broke, I still can't believe all of this. It's real? He nodded, whispering so only she could hear. Every word is real, and the only thing I know for certain is I want you by my side, forever. Emily laughed softly through her tears, wiping her face with the sleeve of her jacket. Her eyes sparkled like stars, and true to herself, she cracked a joke. So, do I get a discount at your company now? The crowd went silent for a beat, then burst into laughter. Even those still crying couldn't help but laugh along. Daniel stared at her, startled, then laughed openly, a genuine, heartfelt laugh he hadn't felt in years. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers, his voice carrying enough for everyone to hear. You get a discount on everything, because you don't need to buy anything at all. Everything I have is already yours. Cheers erupted again. The chant of, Emily, Emily, rose high, echoing through the little town. Amanda sobbed pathetically. Zinab stood silent, powerless. But no one cared anymore. Every eye was on the couple, the girl in rags and the man once called a beggar, now revealed as a billionaire who held her hand and declared his love before the entire town. Emily looked up into his eyes. All the fear, the shame, the years of being trampled seemed to dissolve. All she saw now was one truth. Someone had chosen her not for wealth, not for perfection, but simply for who she was. She laughed through her tears, teasing one last time. Daniel, you're not going to regret this, right? Because I'll make you wash dishes forever. Daniel laughed, his voice joining the roar around them. He squeezed her hand tighter, his eyes shining. I've been ready for that, Emily. For life. The private jet gleamed under the night sky, its silver-white body shining with the Coltec logo near the tail. The low hum of its engines swept away the whispers and mocking laughter that had shadowed Emily for years. The townspeople of Monterey looked up, hundreds of phones raised, camera flashes blinking. Tonight would be remembered forever. The girl once mocked as the beggar's bride now boarded a private jet, hand in hand with a billionaire CEO. Daniel guided Emily up the steps, his eyes never leaving hers. The tattered gown had been replaced by a simple turquoise dress, quickly brought by his assistant, but on her shoulders she still wore his crisp white jacket like a talisman of protection. The cabin door closed. The small world that had mocked her, live-streamed her shame, shrank into nothing more than a faint dot below. Emily sank into the Italian leather seat, so soft it seemed to swallow her whole. She pressed her palms to her face, still overwhelmed. Through the oval window, the town lights shrank into tiny dots scattered across the dark earth. She exhaled, half dazed, half incredulous. So, I just went from rags to an Italian leather seat. Bit of a fast upgrade, don't you think? Daniel chuckled, loosening his tie as he sat beside her. He leaned in, his voice low but sure. You've got it wrong. I'm the one who just upgraded. Emily turned, raising a brow. Oh, really? How so? He clasped her hand, smiling. From eating cheap burgers alone to having you sitting next to me. Emily laughed, the sound light and chiming like wind bells. She buried her face against his jacket, her tears and laughter mingling together. Meanwhile, down on the ground and across social media, a storm had broken loose. The hashtag number sign Cinderella in California soared to the top of the trending list within hours. The clips Amanda had live-streamed, meant to ridicule her sister and her homeless groom, were now rebranded by netizens as a modern fairy tale. Millions of comments poured in. Now this is what true love looks like. A woman who saw his heart, not his wallet. California has its Cinderella. The internet celebrated while Zinab and Amanda became objects of national mockery. Emily didn't know, but Daniel had already glanced at the iPad on the table, his lips curving with quiet satisfaction. He chose not to tell her yet, saving the surprise for later. The flight attendant offered champagne, but Emily shook her head. She leaned into Daniel's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to break the fragile moment. You know, for years I got used to thinking I only deserved to be laughed at. Today, I don't even know how to put this into words. Daniel tightened his hold on her hand, his voice deep and warm. You never belonged to their laughter. You belong to skies like these. Emily chuckled softly. Oh my, a billionaire CEO, and you flirt like you're straight out of a romance movie? Daniel's eyes twinkled, serious yet playful. Not flirting, just telling the truth. Emily blinked at him, startled, then laughed again, her tears shining. The jet soared higher, cutting through clouds. Moonlight streamed in, reflected in Emily's eyes. She turned to Daniel, gazing at him for a long moment. This man had once walked into her life disguised as someone nobody wanted near, and yet it was his eyes back then, the same steady gaze that she could never dismiss. And now, with the truth revealed, she realized his heart had never changed. Emily grinned through her tears, teasing to hide the catch in her throat. If the press asks tomorrow, how are you going to introduce me? As the beggar's bride or as your dishwashing CEO? Daniel laughed, taking her hand and placing it over his chest. I'll tell them. She's the only queen of my life. Emily laughed out loud, wrapping her arms around his shoulder, her smile melting into the last of her tears. Outside, hashtags still burned across the internet, millions talking about them. But inside the jet, there were only two people. A girl once buried under ridicule and rags, and a man who once walked as a beggar. Now they sat side by side in Italian leather seats, flying through endless sky. Emily closed her eyes, smiling, whispering, maybe from today on, I'm no longer the beggar's bride. I'm the bride of the sky. Daniel bent down, pressing a kiss to her hair, his voice low but certain. Not just the sky, Emily. The whole world. The wide cabin of Daniel's private jet, normally designed for business trips, had been turned into a lavish dressing room. Soft LED lights glowed overhead, Italian leather seats were pushed neatly aside, and in the center, a stylist and assistants brought in from San Francisco laid out gowns, jewelry boxes, and entire suitcases of cosmetics, like a miniature fashion atelier in the sky. Emily sat in the large swivel chair, bewildered and a little shy. Just hours earlier, she had worn rags under the scornful eyes of her entire town. And now before her lay a glittering wedding gown adorned with crystals and simulated diamonds, alongside a delicate tiara that sparkled beneath the cabin lights. Oh my God, Emily whispered, quickly covering her mouth. I can't wear something like this. I don't need all this luxury. The stylist smiled gently. Trust me, you won't just wear it, you'll make it yours. Daniel leaned against the doorway, arms folded, his gaze never leaving Emily. He stepped closer, his warm baritone cutting through the steady hum of the jet's engines. You're wrong, Emily. It's you who makes everything luxurious. She whipped her head around, blinking. What do you mean? Daniel bent down, took her hand firmly and said, a diamond gown can shine, but it's soulless without you. Even in an old hoodie, you made me feel like I was looking at a queen. Emily laughed, though tears shimmered in her eyes. You really do know how to make someone cry and laugh at the same time. The stylist went to work. Emily's soft brown hair was gathered into a simple updo, with a few gentle curls falling to frame her cheeks. A light touch of makeup highlighted her sparkling blue eyes and natural smile. The gown was slipped onto her shoulders, its long train spilling across the jet's cabin floor, reflecting light like a sky full of stars. When the small tiara was placed on her head, Emily startled at her reflection. The girl staring back was no longer the beggar's bride mocked by neighbors. She was radiant, regal, her eyes alight with quiet strength. Emily touched the mirror with trembling fingers, whispering, is this really me? Daniel stood behind her, looking over her shoulder with a smile. Yes, this is you, the woman who made me believe true love exists. Emily turned, her eyes shining. But I didn't do anything grand. I just survived each day. And that's the miracle, Daniel replied, his voice thick. You kept your heart intact even when they tried to crush it. Emily bit her lip, then chuckled. That sounded like an inspirational ad campaign. Daniel arched a brow, feigning seriousness. Then I'll write one called The Queen in a Hoodie. And of course, you're the star. They both laughed, their joy ringing out across the cabin, blending with the steady rhythm of the engines. The stylist stepped back, giving them space. Emily and Daniel stood before the full-length mirror at the front of the cabin. Reflected was a pair, the girl in a diamond-studded gown, a tiara glowing on her head, and the man beside her in a pristine white suit. Emily tilted her head, watching him through the mirror. If my parents were still alive, they'd be laughing until they cried. Why? Daniel asked, lips curving in amusement. Because their daughter, who burned pancakes and spilled coffee her whole life, is now sitting here in a diamond gown. Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head. You're wrong again. If your parents were here, they'd be proud. Proud that you kept a heart that could still laugh, even through pain. Emily's eyes glistened. She turned to him, whispering, You always know how to turn the smallest things into magic. Daniel leaned closer, whispering back, Number, you are the magic. They laughed together at their own reflections, but it wasn't the laughter of strangers. It was the joy of two souls who had finally found home. The cabin grew quiet. The stylist and assistants withdrew to the back, leaving the two of them alone. Emily sat, gently touching the tiara on her head. Daniel knelt on one knee, not to propose, but simply to adjust the hem of her gown. His movements were careful, as if afraid she might shatter under too rough a touch. Emily giggled, teasing, A billionaire CEO who knows how to hem a dress? Daniel looked up, winking. I told you I'm your lifetime dishwashing servant. Hemming dresses is just a side skill. Emily burst into laughter, tears sliding down her cheeks. When the clock on the cabin wall ticked past midnight, Emily leaned against Daniel's shoulder, her eyes half closed. In the mirror, their reflection still shone. The girl in a diamond gown, tiara sparkling, beside the man who loved her without condition. Emily sighed, murmuring, I don't need all this glamour. What I need is just you here. Daniel squeezed her hand, smiling peacefully. And it's you who makes everything around me feel grand. They both laughed softly, their warmth glowing in the glass like starlight beyond the window. In the quiet of the jet, high above the night sky, a queen was born not because of a gown or a crown, but because she had found a love that made her shine. Los Angeles at night glittered like a grand festival of lights. As the silver-white private jet touched down on the international runway, cameras were already poised, microphones raised high. Dozens of reporters jostled for space, and television vans lined the tarmac. The story, Cinderella in California, had dominated social media in just hours, and now every eye was fixed on the jet's door. Descending the steps, Daniel held Emily's hand. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. Voices shouted from every direction. Emily, Emily, look this way! Billionaire Daniel Cole, is this your bride? Is the Cinderella fairy tale real? Emily felt dizzy, her hand cold as ice, but Daniel's grip only tightened. He bent close, whispering just for her amidst the chaos. Don't be afraid. They're not laughing at you anymore. Now you are the one the world admires. She lifted her head. In the storm of flashes, reflected in his steady gaze, Emily saw it clearly. All the mockery of the past had vanished like smoke. By the next morning, every major U.S. outlet splashed the headlines, Cinderella in California, from rags to a billionaire's jet. CEO Daniel Cole declares his modern fairy tale. Emily Carter, the stepdaughter robbed of her inheritance, returns in glory. It wasn't just glamour shots. Daniel's legal team released official documents, including evidence that Zainab had altered the will, seized properties, the boutique, and savings that Emily's father had left her. Bank statements, notarized papers, all revealed in stark detail. In a press statement, the lawyers declared, "We are filing suit against Zainab and her daughter Amanda, compelling them to return all inheritance to its rightful heir, Emily Carter. This is not only about money, but about justice." The nation erupted. Social media brimmed with outrage towards Zainab and Amanda. Cruel, turning her into a servant just to steal everything. Justice served. They finally got what they deserved. Emily, we're with you. Reporters swarmed the Monterey house. But this time, no one laughed at Emily. Instead, fury rained down on Zinab and Amanda. What do you say about stealing your stepdaughter's inheritance? Amanda, how do you feel now that your mocking live streams are being used as evidence against you? Zinab kept her face hard, dodging cameras. But the truth was undeniable. Amanda sobbed hysterically, hair disheveled, screaming it was all a misunderstanding. But no one believed her. In a swift court hearing, Daniel's lawyers presented overwhelming proof. The judge ordered Zinab and Amanda to return all assets to Emily, while also facing civil penalties. When the verdict was announced, Emily sat beside Daniel in his Los Angeles high-rise office. The sunset spilled gold across the glass, the city glowing below. She held the court ruling in her hands, but only sighed softly. Daniel studied her, puzzled. You don't feel triumphant? This is justice for you. Emily smiled faintly, eyes tinged with sadness. I just hope they learn from it. Money can be lost and regained, but greed and cruelty, if they don't change, no fortune will ever be enough. Daniel went quiet, then chuckled gently, squeezing her hand. You really are different. Most people would celebrate revenge. You, even when you win, still think of the ones who lost. Emily gazed out over Los Angeles, her eyes shining. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. I just don't want anyone else to walk that road again. Daniel slipped his arm around her shoulders, his voice low and warm. And that's what makes you the strongest woman I've ever known. Emily laughed, nudging him playfully. Careful, or tomorrow the headlines will scream, Billionaire CEO admits his wife is stronger than his company. Daniel arched a brow, pretending to be serious. That's true, I can lose the company, but I could never lose you. They both laughed together. And in that moment, all the noise outside, the flashes, headlines, gossip melted away. All that remained was the rare calm after so many storms. That day, Los Angeles did not just witness the arrival of a billionaire CEO, it witnessed the rebirth of a girl who once had everything stolen. Emily returned not with vengeance or bitterness, but with grace, demonstrating that kindness is the greatest strength of all. Over the city, the sunset blazed gold. Daniel held her hand and whispered, You've returned not just with your inheritance, but with your heart intact. Emily smiled, answering softly, And that heart now belongs to you. The Malibu shoreline glowed under the golden sunset. White sand stretched endlessly, and a simple arch of roses stood tall, modest, yet picture-perfect. The wedding was not a grand display, but rather an intimate gathering, just enough for those who truly loved Emily and Daniel to attend. When Emily appeared in her light, flowing white gown, Daniel froze in place. As she walked closer, he whispered, almost in awe, I swear even the waves are crashing harder today just to celebrate you. Emily laughed, her cheeks flushing pink. If the waves love me too, will you get jealous? Of course, Daniel said with mock seriousness, then leaned close to her ear. But lucky me, you chose to kiss me, not the ocean. When it was time for speeches, Emily held the microphone, gazing at the familiar, loving faces before her. Her voice was soft, but firm. Happiness doesn't come from money. It comes from finding the person who makes you want to smile, even on your worst day. From the crowd, Daniel raised his hand, half joking, half serious. Exactly, and I have proof. Every time she smiles, I go a little more bankrupt because my heart can't handle it. Laughter rippled through the ceremony. Emily shook her head, eyes sparkling. Then I suppose I've officially taken over your entire company with just one smile. When it came time to exchange rings, Daniel leaned in, his voice low, meant only for her. Thank you for turning every one of my days into a good day. Emily curved her lips, whispering back, And what about the days when I'm angry? How will you count those? Daniel smirked, teasing gently. Then I'll call those the days I practiced surviving my queen. Emily burst out laughing, tears slipping down her cheeks, tears of happiness. When the minister declared them husband and wife, Daniel bent down and Emily rose onto her toes. Their lips met in a kiss, long, deep, and unshaken against the backdrop of the ocean's endless roar. The guests erupted in applause. A little boy shouted from the back, "It looks just like a Disney movie." Emily heard him and laughed softly into the kiss. Daniel pulled back just enough to murmur against her ear, "Yes, but Disney movies fade to black after the kiss. Ours will play forever," Emily whispered back, smiling through her tears. "As long as you remember your role as lifetime dishwasher." Daniel laughed out loud, pulling her into his arms even tighter. Weeks later, Emily stood before the old Monterey house, newly painted, refreshed, reborn. Hanging above the door was a wooden sign that read, "Home Brew Cafe and Community." Daniel leaned against the porch column, arms crossed, squinting at the sign. "Are you sure you didn't mean to name it the Queen's Cafe and her dishwasher's den?" Emily giggled, handing him an apron. "Not a bad idea. Here, put this on. You're our honorary staff member." Inside, laughter filled the air, the smell of coffee mingling with the warmth of muffins and pastries. Emily stood behind the counter, frothing milk for cappuccinos, while Daniel occasionally washed glasses or wiped tables. Every time a customer raised an eyebrow and asked, "A billionaire CEO bussing tables?" Daniel simply grinned and answered, "I've already been promoted to lifetime dishwasher." From behind the counter, Emily doubled over laughing, tears in her eyes. One quiet afternoon, as the cafe settled after a busy rush, Emily stood by the window, watching the golden sunlight spill over the street. Daniel slipped his arms around her from behind. "Do you know something?" Emily whispered. "True love is still the real miracle." Daniel pressed a kiss to her hair, his voice low and steady. "And that miracle is standing right here in my arms." Emily turned around, her playful spark returning. "Are you sure? Because this miracle still makes you do the dishes every day?" Daniel laughed, holding her tighter, their laughter mingling with the sound of the waves echoing in the distance. On the sands of Malibu, beneath sunsets and ocean waves, a story had come full circle. What began as humiliation, mockery, and torn dresses ended in a wedding, laughter, and a love stronger than any wealth could buy. Emily Carter returned not as a victim of cruelty, but as a woman reborn, crowned not by a tiara, but by kindness, resilience, and the love of a man who saw her for who she truly was. The world would remember the beggar's bride who became the queen of the sky. But to Emily, none of that mattered. What mattered was the laughter she now carried, the cafe that welcomed everyone with warmth, and the man who never let go of her hand. Daniel whispered one last time, his lips brushing her ear as the sun dipped below the horizon. "You didn't just change my days, Emily. You changed my life." Emily smiled, eyes glistening, her voice soft as the tide. "And you gave me back my heart." Together they laughed hand in hand, their story no longer a cruel joke, but a living miracle.